sometimes life gives you things that you didn't deserve or you didn't expect or
Sure.
you didn't see coming, but it's still a gift. It just comes poorly wrapped. Sometimes it's brown paper, newspaper, what not even wrapped properly, and then you thought it's some kind of what rubbish is this? What is this horrible thing that I've just been
Exactly.
given? And that thing could very well become a turning point.
Hey everyone, I'm Angeline Constantinou, and this is Her Unapologetic Voice. This podcast was created for women who lead but are done leading from apology. Here we have real, unfiltered conversations about boundaries, truth, and confidence. The kind of talks that remind you your voice is not something you find once, it's something you build. Every episode will give you something real to take with you, whether it's a boundary script, a reflection tool, or simply the courage to say what you really mean. So if you're ready to lead from your truth, not from approval, this is your space. Your unapologetic voice starts here. Good afternoon or good evening or good morning. Welcome back to Her Unapologetic Voice podcast. The podcast and the space where we amplify women who are rewriting their stories, reclaiming their power, and leading in ways that feel true to what they are. So today's conversation is such an important one, especially in a world that often rewards being the loudest in the room. So today, my special guest, which I cannot wait to bring on in a minute, we are going to be talking about the quiet warrior, owning your voice without being loud. So I'm honored to welcome Serena Lowe, an ex-lawyer turned trauma-informed coach who specializes in helping quiet achievers thrive in an extrovert-biased culture without having to act loud, perform, or become someone they're not. Serena is also the host of the Quiet Warrior podcast, where she challenges myths about introversion and inspires listeners to celebrate their quiet super strengths. She is also the author of The Hero Within, Reinvent Your Life, One New Chapter at a Time, an Amazon bestseller that invites readers to rewrite their story with intention and courage. So if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or pressured to be louder to succeed, this episode is for you. So without further ado, Serena, welcome to Her Unapologetic Voice podcast. I am so glad that you're here with us today.
I'm so happy to be here as well, Angeline. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. And Serena, I always ask all my guests, what time is it now where you are?
It's 6:15 in the morning.
That is early. So let's dive into this topic because I know that this topic really resonates with you. And what I wanted to ask you was, what made you realize that success as you knew it wasn't sustainable for you? So let's talk about your journey.
Right. So I started off as a lawyer in government for 11 years. And at that 11th year, something shifted inside of me. And that was the realization that 30 years down the road, I might have reached retirement. I would be looking back over my career to see, okay, I've accomplished all these things. And then I had this thought, what if there was something else out there for me? What if there were other things I never explored because I was so obsessed with just following this one path? Now, I come from an Asian culture and a very traditional family as well, where you follow the script. You do what everybody else is doing. You always aim for the highest, the best, and it's all about the next thing and the next thing and some external metrics of success. So as long as you're sticking to the script, you've gone to uni, you're in law school or you're in medical school, you graduate, you get that great job, and then you get married and all the rest of it. So it's very linear. That's called progression. That's called success. You make your parents proud. As long as you're doing all that, you're good. You'll get praised. But as soon as you start thinking, I wonder if I could do something else, and that something else is not conventional, it's not proven, it's just maybe your own intuition or you feel your own passion, those things are considered very irresponsible, very reckless. You'll be called names, you'll be called a dreamer, thinking impossible things, and it's considered not practical. And anything that's not practical has no value. It's only for people who have too much time or people who have already succeeded. So for me to be entertaining those thoughts at that time, I didn't dare tell anybody about it. I worked it out in my own head. I did a lot of rumination, had a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure out, can I do this? What if I walk away from what I have now? What would be
Right.
out there for me? And do I have the courage to do it? So that was what was in my mind.
Wow. Yeah, see that? And I was brought up like in a strict Greek Orthodox culture. So this conversation really resonates with me. And when did you first notice the pressure to be louder or more extroverted?
I think I noticed it as early as primary school because those of my classmates and friends who were more confident socially were the ones making lots of friends, were popular, were in leadership positions. It just seemed to come very effortlessly. But for those of us who were quiet, who were more in the background, not very sure of ourselves, figuring things out, those ones seemed to be unnoticed or overlooked.
Okay, overlooked. Okay, in what way? Can you give us an example?
So at school, maybe it would be overlooked for leadership positions because usually they want people who can stand in front of a group and
Uh,
address people and have confidence and be able to persuade other people to do things and lead from what the teachers think leadership looks like. And then you go to work and it's the same. I noticed colleagues and peers who were more confident socially, who
mhm.
always knew what to say, always had something to say. Those were the ones who became more visible.
Right, I see. What are the biggest myths about introversion that you love debunking? Let's talk about that.
Okay, there are so many, Angeline. I think one of them, the first one probably is that there's something wrong with you if you're introverted. Because introverts get told very subtly, but sometimes very directly, you are too quiet. You need to speak up more. So the introvert absorbs the message that there's something wrong with me. I need to be fixed. It's me that's the problem. But actually, sometimes it's a problem of the environment. The environment is too loud, it's too overstimulating. Other people can't stop talking. And so there is no space for the introvert to get a word in. And this happens a lot with introverts in corporate settings. In a meeting, you will have a few voices that tend to dominate the conversation, that are always talking. And then after a while, when you sit and listen and you notice and you think about what people are saying, it's not always the loudest people who are the most competent. Sometimes very loud people are not saying anything that is of particular relevance to what's going on. They are just talking for the sake of talking. And that's to do actually with the wiring of the brain, which is different from extroverts.
Right. I used to
Mm.
work in a corporate environment. So I can relate to this because not that I'm somewhat of an introvert myself, but I'm also an extrovert. But like in meetings, sometimes I wouldn't talk. Like, but how does that person feel? I mean, because there are a lot of loud people out there, don't get me wrong, but it's like they just keep talking and talking and talking. How does that person feel? One who is like they internalize it, if that makes sense. Okay.
Mm.
So, do they feel that they have the power to speak up without being loud?
That usually starts with some internal work. It's not that you can quickly shift the mindset and do something external. You can, but if you don't calibrate your nervous system, you will always feel triggered first because somehow unconsciously you've associated speaking up with being in a dangerous position. So
Ah,
for a lot of introverts, psychological safety is the most important piece. It's the first piece. You're
okay.
scanning the environment, you're noticing who's there, who's talking, who's in sitting where, who's in a prime position. You're picking up a lot of cues just by sitting and observing. And if you feel safe, then you will look for an opportunity to speak up. If you feel prepared, if you would feel you know what you're saying and you can contribute, you will look for an opportunity to speak up. But sometimes people don't give others that opportunity because they are busy talking or they're not noticing that there is that quiet person at the back or sitting on the side of the
Yeah.
board table who is trying to say something. So it's also for the people around to notice their colleagues who are quieter and see how they can make that space for them to speak up. But for
Okay.
the introvert themselves, if there are no such peers who are sensitive and picking up, then it becomes a struggle for them to find the right timing to insert themselves into the conversation. And timing is very much an art. It's an art as well as a science. You have to feel into it and see, okay, I think there's a space here. I think I
Yeah.
can say something now. And what often happens is they try to say something, but then they get cut off, or nobody hears them, or then the conversation has moved on. And so it's quite challenging to find exactly the right moment to speak up for an
Mhm.
introvert.
Right. Okay. And how can quiet women stop apologizing for how they naturally show up? For instance, in a meeting, in a corporate meeting, it could be a yoga, an exercise class, or whatever it is. So, what advice would you give that woman who's quiet, introverted? How can she stop apologizing for how they naturally show up?
I think women in general have been conditioned to take up less space and to be nice, to get along, not to offend people, not to disrupt. And so it's wired into us to want to be like that, to be liked and to fit in and to belong. And if it means staying quiet so that you don't offend anybody, you don't upset the status quo, that's what we do. But if the introverted woman wants to get ahead at work, if there is, let's say, a promotion that or a senior role or something they're working towards, then being invisible is not going to help. So the
Mm,
question is, if visibility feels dangerous, what can we do to make it feel safer? So
right.
I always work with my clients to find micro actions, little things they can start doing so
Okay.
that they start feeling more empowered. Not big things, not right away, because that would terrify their nervous system. That would dysregulate them completely. And they would feel, oh, this is too much. I feel overwhelmed. I can't even start. They would be overthinking it. So let's scale it right back to what is the simplest, smallest, and safest thing I can do right now? Could it
Mhm.
be maybe setting up a one on one with a
Oh,
colleague to check in more regularly
I love
so that
that.
at least I can sense check what's happening with the team, with the room, with the organization, and get an idea of whether my ideas are in the right direction, whether this strategy I'm thinking of, when I articulate that out to somebody else and that person gives me feedback, I get data. And because introverts are usually very data driven, they want proof. They want to be sure they're on the right track. So this is one
Oh,
kind of proof you can get by asking the people around you for feedback. But it also takes courage and honesty to accept that feedback and make sure it's not something that becomes personal. If they say something that sounds negative, it's
mm,
really not about you. It's
mm,
about, well, you asked for feedback and this is how I see
right.
it. And so it becomes an exchange of perception. So that's one way to do it. And another way is sometimes it's not always about speaking up in the meeting. Sometimes you may have genuinely nothing to contribute right now because you're busy listening to people. And listening is a very valuable and underrated skill
Mm,
because it looks like you're not doing anything when you're
right.
silent. But in an introvert's brain, a lot is going on. They are actually taking in everybody's point of view. They are considering, they're weighing pros and cons, analyzing, looking for loopholes, looking for exceptions, thinking about context. And when they're ready to speak, you will notice that those very quiet ones make the most impact because nobody's expecting them to say very much. But
Mm,
then they've done all this synthesizing in their brain. And then the moment they open their mouth and recap what someone said or refer to what someone said like several minutes ago, it's so impressive because
sure.
they demonstrate that they were listening, they were paying attention, they noticed details, they noticed, okay, actually that part doesn't line up with that part. And according to the data, it should be this other way. And here's what I noticed, and here's what I recommend. That comes out so much more powerfully because they weren't talking all the time. They were sitting back, they were noticing, they were taking it in, reorganizing all that into something useful. And then when they articulate it, so it's really important to take the time to think about what you're saying before you say it. And that's where the introvert's strength is.
That's where the strength is. I love that. I love that. And I love that. How does trauma show up differently for quiet achievers? So, how does it show up differently?
So, depending on what people understand about the word trauma itself.
Mm,
Usually it's explained as, trauma with big T and trauma with little t. But basically, trauma is the imprint left behind in the body after somebody has gone through something. And
right.
that something doesn't even need to be very big, very spectacular. It doesn't necessarily have to be a car accident or violence or something like that. It could be something someone said to a child at a very formative and delicate time. And that child has taken on that story, interpreted it to mean something about themselves, and that feeling lingers in the body. So long after it's all over, the adults have moved on, the
Okay.
child has grown up, they are now 30, 40 in the corporate space. That thing comes back to haunt them. So
Wow.
every time, for instance, somebody gives them negative feedback, maybe they think of that critical parent when they were a child who
See?
could never be pleased, who was never satisfied.
Mm,
So you might get 98%, and maybe the parent will say, what happened to the other 2%? And so to them, then it becomes, oh, I'm not good enough. unless I'm perfect. And that drives them then to keep working, keep pushing, keep forcing, keep doing more, because they're still trying to get that elusive 100% that will make that person happy. And so they carry that attitude and that feeling and that
Yeah,
belief right into where they are now, even though it's decades later. And I've seen that happen to so many people.
absolutely. Absolutely. It carries into adulthood. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what does safety look like for someone who's spent years, in other words, wearing the mask? So, what does that look like for them?
Sometimes, if they've been wearing a mask for so long, they don't even know they're wearing a mask. They're not
Mhm.
conscious of it. They think this is necessary. This is for my protection. This is my armor. I can't show people my true self because they might be shocked. They might reject me. They might not love me anymore. And so there are so many reasons that people wear masks. And
Say,
it's really to hide something that we ourselves don't love. So I think really the first brave act, the first act of a quiet warrior is to be able to take off that mask. Look at yourself in the mirror just as you are. And Mel Robbins has got a great little technique for doing that, where she high fives her reflection in the mirror,
yeah. Yes,
says
I've seen
lovely
that. I love
things.
Mel
Yeah,
Robbins.
that's right. And Louise Hay as well, talking
Oh,
lovingly to
yeah.
yourself, the mirror talk. And
You're
what
so
most of us
right.
do as women is we roll out of bed, we get in the bathroom, we look at ourselves, look at all those rings under my eyes.
You
Look how
know,
tired I look. It's unconscious. We don't realize we're
we're
doing
not
that.
conscious of it.
No, but we're
See?
just so used to it. So what I started doing during COVID when I discovered Mel Robbins' work was I started high-fiving myself in the mirror. I started saying loving things to myself in the mirror. And so now when I roll out of bed, hair messy, no makeup, haven't brushed my teeth, I can look at myself in the eye and say, and then just have a big smile. And I smile at myself and I tell myself lovely things. And that sets up my day. Because when you love yourself first, you
Exactly.
feel so much more grounded and secure, and the security is not coming from outside. So it doesn't depend on anybody else being nice to me. It doesn't depend on whether people are making space for me. It's me saying I love myself enough. I have a message to share. I have a voice. It may be a quiet voice, but it is still a voice, and I have things to say, and I'm going to be using my voice for good today.
There you go. And I'm so glad you touched on the mirror work because that's what I've done. The high five mirror work. It's amazing. Like my millionaire mentor, and I hired a mentor. This is going back a few years ago before I came out and shared my story. Like he asked all of us to walk into this is while we're in session. But he said, when you wake up in the morning, go into the bathroom and look at yourself. And I was like, what? At the time, I'm like, okay. And he had us repeat this affirmation: I love myself just the way I am. Something like that. It was like, I love myself. I am worthy. I am beautiful. Like for women, I am beautiful. I am special. All these affirmations. But I actually did it. And you're training the reticular activating system starts to reactivate, and you start to speak positivity into your life. Like I know how that goes because like in the morning, like you'll look at yourself and I'm like, I don't look so great. I'm like, I gotta put on makeup, I gotta shower and all this, but that's not the case. Just say, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I love myself. And when you're able to do that, then you're internalizing the good stuff because when you like wake up and look in the mirror and you're saying you don't look so great, that's how your day is going to be. We're just not conscious of it. Yeah. Smiling and speaking life, speaking positivity. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. So that time to take off the mask. Exactly. Time to take off the mask. And how can quiet women claim visibility without forcing themselves to perform?
I think most people, whether they are introverted or extroverted, will feel the strain from continually having to perform, having to worry about what other people think of you, what's their
Mhm.
perception. It puts you in a very hyper vigilant state because you are constantly scanning to make sure, did I say the right thing? Did that land right? Maybe I should have said it another way. And that sets off this endless overthinking and
Oh,
rumination.
tell me about it. Tell me, and
Yes.
will destroy your peace.
Yes, you could be awake at 3 a.m. thinking, did I say the right thing in the board meeting to that particular partner? Was that one person who looked like he didn't quite agree with what I said? And your mind can't switch off. You're constantly going back and redoing, rewinding, and trying to figure out how could I have made it more perfect. That's no way to live. That is a fast recipe to burnout. We're not wired to be constantly doing. We need to be listening more to our bodies, especially women, right? As we get
Exactly.
older, there are hormonal changes that maybe nobody told us about, and they come upon us so suddenly, we don't realize what's happening. And next thing you know, there's brain fog, you can't string two sentences together on certain days of
Right.
the month. And all this comes at you while you're still trying to maintain that perfectionist,
There you go.
high achieving kind of mode of keep going in what you're doing in your 20s and 30s. And it's not going to work. And it's detrimental to your body, it's harmful. What we actually need is to give ourselves permission to rest, to be
Mm,
okay with it. I'm going to take 10 minutes right now because I just had this really stressful meeting and I'm about to go into another one, but I need a clear separation. I just need to step outside, go for a quick walk, and have a bit of sunshine, maybe just get away from the desk and the screens and the thinking, have a shift of energy, talk nicely to myself, just deep breathe or whatever we do to feel better. We need to be constantly noticing what's happening in our bodies, how are we feeling, checking in, because that's part of self care and self love. That noticing. Our modern lifestyle is not designed for that. It's designed to keep us constantly switched on mentally. Just as you leave your laptop like constantly switched on, it's going to drain the battery in the end. It needs to recharge. And the introvert's social battery is designed such that the more stimulation, the more people, the more conversation, the faster it gets drained. And so
exactly.
then you come to 3 o'clock in the afternoon and your battery is more than half drained and you're like, I'm so tired. I need a coffee. It's not really about that because the coffee will just keep you going. It's a quick fix.
It's a
It
quick,
preps you up, it
yeah.
pushes you up maybe for a little bit, but
Mm,
ultimately, what you need is rest. You need
mm,
to step away. You need to recharge. You need to have nothing happening right now, nobody to talk to, no emails to answer. Just be inside your quiet bubble and be at peace with yourself for a little bit, whether it's 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, if you can spare, 30 minutes before bed to do some journaling, some reflection. All those are ways to bring that level of, I have to perform, 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 bring that back down to neutral
right.
and be okay inside there. No interruptions, no disruptions, no scrolling, no whatever, no stimulation coming in from outside, so that
Mm,
you can be at peace with yourself inside and just go back to that place where you can recharge.
exactly. Right. Our laptops need to be recharged. Our phones need to be recharged. And I know people that their phones go down to 20%. And I'm like, you're on the phone way too much. You are on the phone way too much. Unplugging. That's what I do. Like I went out for a walk this morning before my meeting. After this is over, I'm going to recalibrate and go out for a walk because recalibrating your nervous system is necessary. I realize this is in the last 6 months. Like I feel calmer now. And actually, I feel more productive because in corporate America, in this world that in the US, we're conditioned to believe that, oh, you got to keep going, got to make your number, especially in sales, because I used to work in sales and it was brutal. And then by the time you get home, you're exhausted from all of that. So I'm so glad that you brought that out in the open. And I am praying and hoping that corporate America is listening to this. Okay, so because it's very important to educate the workforce about this too. So important. Instead of pushing your employees, give them a break, give them some grace. Let them go. If they had a tough conversation with a potential client, get up and go out for a walk for 10 minutes. And that's going to recalibrate your nervous system. So I want to talk about reinvention and growth. So, what does it mean to reinvent your life one chapter at a time?
The reason I broke it down to one chapter at a time is because a lot of us think when we see or hear the word reinvention, it's usually associated with some very
Mm,
high profile person, some influencer, some,
yep.
zero to hero kind of person who has done some spectacular things. They had nothing, the life was stacked against them, and then they became successful. And so we all put them on a pedestal, we look up to them, we admire them. But I think there are so many little ways that all of us are invited to reconsider, reevaluate our lives, and think about, is this still what I want? Is the thing that I wanted as a child or the thing that I said I wanted to achieve when I was in my 20s still the thing that I want now in my 40s and 50s? And that is an invitation. It is not forced upon us. Sometimes it is. Sometimes life challenges us in the way that, it happens and then you find yourself right in the middle of it and you have no choice but to do something. I have to choose, what do I do now? What do I do next? I didn't see this thing coming, but now it's landed on my head. and I need to make a decision. That's one way. But sometimes it can come more gently. It can be like a whisper, it can be an intuitive nudge, it can be a friend asking you something, it can be something you read in a book, something you watched on a drama, and it keeps coming back to you like a theme. And I pay attention to those themes and those patterns. If something becomes like a recurrent message, then there is a meaning to it. There is a purpose for it. Someone is trying to tell me, hey, I think you need to pause and you need to look and you need to zoom out, and you're too, attached to what's happening right now and the details of it. What if there's another way to live? What if there's another path for you? What if there is something else you could be doing? And so there's no judgment in that. It's just noticing, and then you can be curious about it. When we were so curious as children
Right.
are all imaginative, they are dreamers, they are excited, they're curious, they want to know what's happening, what's next. And we have lost that. We become disconnected from that curiosity. Everything is outcome focused, everything is data driven, everything has to be proven. But sometimes life gives you things that you didn't deserve or you didn't expect or you
Sure.
didn't see coming, but it's still a gift. It just comes poorly wrapped. Sometimes it's brown paper, newspaper, what not even wrapped properly, and then you thought it's some kind of what rubbish is this? What is this horrible thing that I've just been
Exactly.
given? And that thing could very well become a turning point. It
Mm,
could become a breakthrough. It's really about perception. It's what am I going to do with this thing now that it's landed in my lap? Am I going to accept it? Am I going to acknowledge it? Am I going to reject it and say, I'm not having any of this? I refuse because this doesn't follow my script. This is not what I wanted. I didn't ask for this. Or you could say, I wonder if there is an opportunity here. I
hmm.
wonder if there is a lesson here. I wonder if this is trying to tell me I could be doing something different. Maybe it's asking me to look at life differently. Let me sit with this for a while. Let me look at this and ask myself some deeper questions and see what
Sure.
happens, see what comes up. And that could be another way to reinvent yourself. So
Mm.
it's really noticing when that invitation comes and then making a decision.
There you go. I like that. I like that. Absolutely. Everything starts with a decision. Exactly. And how do we redefine confidence on our terms?
That is such a good question, because just yesterday I was talking to a client and she
Mm.
was saying, I keep getting told I need more confidence. I keep getting told that I need to be more confident. And this is an introverted high achiever we're talking about.
Wow.
So, to somebody else who is not introverted, confidence looks very different. It could look like talking a lot, talking loudly, having a certain kind of voice or body language, dressing a certain way, taking up space differently. But for a quiet person, confidence could be simply articulating, this is my point of view, this is how I see it, this is what the data says, and this is my recommendation. And it doesn't have to be loud or flashy or dynamic. So sometimes I do question when we use words casually like that and expect
Mm,
everybody to respond in the same way. And then when somebody doesn't quite do it the way we want it or
mm.
the way we expect it, we say that person is lacking confidence or that person is not quite charismatic enough. That person lacks executive presence. What are we actually saying? We're saying
Exactly.
they don't communicate the way I do. They
Mm,
don't communicate the way I like them to. They don't lead the way I expect a leader to be like. So
mm.
we really need to do some self-reflection as well as leaders and see what exactly are we asking of our employees, because they are not one person. They are all different individuals with different challenges, different personalities, different strengths.
Mm,
What if instead I could really get to know what that particular person's strengths are,
mm.
how they do leadership, what they think leadership is? Maybe their definition of leadership is they are that empathetic person that their juniors trust, whose
Right.
juniors can have that conversation with them when in a difficult time and know that they are not going to judge them. If they can ask a casual question and know that they are not being assessed in that moment. And that is a different kind of leadership from
Sure
someone
it
who
is.
comes in a top down way, who appears very confident, very direct, very assertive. And that is also another kind of leadership. So they are not all in one kind of confidence or one kind of leadership. It's very nuanced, it's context driven. And I think we need to give room for that kind of context and space.
Exactly. But like imagine that someone telling you or your boss telling you that you lack confidence and oh my God, what would you say to that person who actually experienced that?
I would say the first thing is to take a step back, because for people who take great pride in their work. The quiet achievers, the high achievers, high performers, there is already that blurring of lines between what I do for my work and what it means for me as a person. The identity, the work identity and the personal identity outside of work becomes almost one thing. And that is dangerous because as soon as that happens, everything that happens in the office
Mhm.
affects my identity. It's a reflection on me as a person, but it's not. It's actually a screenshot of a moment in time
Right.
of what's going on in the office and how the boss was feeling and how you were feeling and what you said, which maybe could have been said a different way, but it landed a particular way. So there's so many possible combinations, but we fixate on that one thing and that one moment when someone said you are lacking in confidence, and we make it about ourselves. Oh, that means I'm lacking. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve this promotion. Maybe I shouldn't even try for it. Who do I think I am?
See?
Aiming high, right? And we saw that the self-talk starts, that negative spiral starts.
Mhm.
So I think it's the first thing is really important to separate yourself from the work that you do. The work you do can change.
There you go.
You could decide I'm not doing this work anymore, or I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do it on my terms. But that is a separate thing from who you are, Angeline, as a human being, as an individual. There is no other person exactly like you with all your unique combination of strengths and talents and your quirkiness and the things you love. So that is you, and that is nothing to do with what you do.
Exactly. Exactly. I totally agree with you. Absolutely. It's on them. It's not on you. So, what does living unapologetically look like for a quiet woman who is finally honoring herself?
There are so many ways I could answer this, but I'm thinking of what a friend said recently, and that is to choose quiet, to embrace your quiet, not to have to defend it and keep explaining, "Oh, well, I don't like parties or anything like that, and then worry that other people are going to judge you for it. Be
Exactly.
totally comfortable missing out on invitations, missing out on gatherings. It's called the joy of missing out for a reason.
Oh, I
Because
love that.
the introvert is not wired for all that. We are wired for peace and quiet. We are happiest when we are in our pajamas at home, in bed, reading a good book, maybe with the cats around and you having a cup of tea, that sort of thing. That's what attracts and actually brings life to a quiet person. And
Mhm.
to an extroverted person, it looks different. It's the parties, the invitations, the lots of people, lots of talking, the noise, and so on. So choose your definition of what gives you life. If quiet is your idea of happiness, that's that. Choose that. Prioritize that. Block it out. Make sure you have time in your schedule every day or in a week throughout, scattered throughout, that brings you back to that, gives you time for that, lets you breathe, and keep saying no. Practice saying no to having to feel I need to go to that networking event. I need to be seen at this place. I need to talk to this person. You can
I
find
agree with you.
alternatives to that. You don't have to be doing all that just to please or to fit in or to be accepted.
I totally agree. And I've turned down invitations. I have because I love my quiet and I love what you said embrace the quiet. That's what I do, especially Sundays. Sundays are solo most of the time. 99% of the time, it's solo. And I love my quiet time. Like I'll take myself out to brunch. I'll go downtown, go walk around, and just being comfortable in the silence. Yeah, totally agree. We were born to stand out, not fit in. You can do that quietly. Serena, this conversation it's been such a powerful reminder that confidence doesn't have to be loud and leadership doesn't require performance. So where can people reach you?
The best place for people to reach me would be on LinkedIn because I'm very active there. I'm posting practically every day and sharing thoughts on what introversion is and how to show up without having to perform. And the other place you can find me is the Quiet Warrior podcast because I release episodes every week. I'm constantly interviewing people on different aspects of what it means to live a life where you are the quiet warrior. You're demonstrating courage, you're showing up, but you're doing it quietly.
I love it. Showing up quietly, the Quiet Warrior podcast. And you're on Spotify, Apple, and
All
okay,
the platforms, yes.
all the streaming platforms. Okay, great. So, everyone, you could reach out to Serena Lowe on LinkedIn, and you can also schedule a podcast episode with the Quiet Warrior podcast. This is why you're here today on her unapologetic voice. Thank you so much for giving permission to every quiet achiever, listening to stop shrinking, stop masking, wearing the mask, and start honoring who they truly are. So if today's episode resonated with you, I want to encourage you to connect with Serena, tune into the Quiet Warrior podcast, and explore her book, The Hero Within, which is on Amazon. And to every woman listening, just because you're being quiet is not a flaw. It's not something to fix. It is a super strength waiting to be honored. So until next time, keep standing in your truth. Use your voice in the way that feels right for you in your body. And remember that this is Her Unapologetic Voice podcast. We are on Spotify, Apple. Follow us and like us and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Her Unapologetic Voice. And this podcast episode will be live soon. So Serena, it's been a pleasure. I love this conversation. Goodbye until the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Her Unapologetic Voice. Every conversation here is meant to help you build confidence from the inside out and find strength in your own words. If today's message resonated, follow the show and share it with a friend who's ready to lead from who she truly is. You can also connect with me on social media at Her Unapologetic Voice podcast for updates and behind the scenes insights. Remember, confidence begins when you stop apologizing for your truth and start speaking from it. I'm Angeline Constantinu, and I will see you in the next episode.